Hello, my friends. How are you guys? I'm so excited to be here. We are going to be talking about a really fun topic tonight. Kind of a topic that has a lot of questions that circulate about it, around it. And these programs, we're going to be talking about homeschool funding programs. And a lot of people are always asking, what do these programs look like? How do I bring them into our homes, to families? What opportunities are available for our kids? And how do we even begin to use them? And so there's just so many opportunities that are expanding, and things are always shifting and changing. And so I think we need to have these conversations open and going so that we have clear and good education surrounding them. And so that's what I'm excited to talk about today. And I'm really excited because I'm not going to do it alone. I'm going to bring in Casey from Red Brick Schoolhouse. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to bring her on is because she's been using these programs here in Utah for quite a while now, as well as myself. We have both been using them. And so she's going to bring some really good live firsthand experience and be able to kind of share what it's been like, the good and the bad, as well as we're going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing blossom and change, and address some of those things. Casey's really good at recognizing that every family and every home and every child is very different and unique, and that there is a lot of respect that we have with that. And so I'm just going to grab her here and bring her in. And all right, Casey, welcome.
Thank you.
I am so glad you're here. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your time. I think you are going to just be a wealth of knowledge, and we are so grateful for you. I'm excited to hear all the things that you're going to share with us. You guys can find Casey over at Red Brick Schoolhouse here on Instagram. Casey, why don't you spend just a minute and tell us a little bit about yourself, about your homeschooling journey, anything that you would like others to know.
Okay, well, we currently reside in Utah, and I'm homeschooling 4 kids. They're all different. We dyslexia, ADHD, all the things in our home. We started homeschooling when my oldest was halfway through her kindergarten year, and I was the never homeschooler. I was never going to do that. I was going to go be a principal someday, and God had a different plan for us. So we pulled her out halfway through her kindergarten year and started homeschooling to see how it would go, saw great potential with it, and then we just never looked back. So we've been homeschooling ever since, and I honestly lost count of how many years that's been.
Yes.
It's been a while, many years,
Good.
but
Yeah.
we love it so much. So, and we've done a variety of things from these programs to independent homeschooling. So we've done a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I love about the homeschooling lifestyle, right? That there's just so many different opportunities. And I think for me, that was actually one of the things that as we kind of dove into this world, I really wish that I understood it better, because I had never seen anything differently than just I was public schooled. And so it just is so natural to just like kind of follow exactly what you've always done, right? And so in hindsight, as I started learning about these programs and just really other opportunities out there, I'm like, oh, there's actually multiple ways that this can be done. And so I wish I knew that a little bit better. Before we get into things, Casey, what's something that is like that you wish that you might have known a little bit differently, or that you would like to understand a little bit better, surrounding the homeschool world and the homeschool funding opportunities?
There's so many like stereotypes and preconceived notions about what these programs are and what they entail. And I just wish I knew, one, that they're expanding and that they're increasing. Also, I don't know, people, they like to think that it's either like there's extremes in this, and
Mm-hmm.
they think that it's either, okay, free money, no accountability, or they see them as a threat to homeschooling, or they see that there's, potential for too much government involvement. And it kind of scares people away from even exploring these as options. And so it's much more nuanced than that. And I just wish that I had an understanding of that from the get go, and that I could really grasp how these programs work and where they're available. And, we have over 30 states now with school choice programs. So they're increasing all over the nation, and they're going to continue to do so. So it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really complex topic too. A lot of layers. And so we could probably spend hours going over things and going down and like trying to like nitpick all the nitty gritty things. And we're not doing that today. We're just going to have a really broad general overview with the idea that we hope that more people jump off of this and do your own research, form your own opinions. This will kind of give you some starting places, especially if you're trying to learn more. But we definitely invite you to go and do your own research and learn, because it's almost like a whole nother language. When I was putting some thoughts together, I was like, this is like a new lingo. And I'm like, we've been in it for a really long time now. So I'm like, I remember back in the beginning, I just remember being like, wait, what is this? Because you just don't know what you don't know, right? So let me start with this real quick. It's just a really brief summary of what some of these homeschool programs are. A lot of times these programs are government funded, like Casey mentioned. And so you have this idea that the funds are being redirected from schools into families so that families can decide how their child is educated. According to, I looked this up for this call for the 2025 here in Utah, in the taxpayer summary, the average public school student costs about $14,000 a year. So it kind of begs the question, like, well, what kind of, where are those funds going and how is it serving my child? And of course, there's so many layers to this, like, and so many good areas that funding is being spent on, and other areas that I know parents are questioning, right? So, and it kind of comes as like, well, what about those of us who are not using the public school system or public education, and do we have the right to some or partial of those amounts in the funding, right? And it's the idea that their child would have received those funds had they gone that direction. And the way that I've always kind of looked at it is it okay for the money to follow the child so that it becomes more parent directed, so that parents can be more involved in the choices and these school choices and parent choices for the future. And it also allows for a lot more flexibility for families, right? We're kind of stepping away from this is the one and only way to do it. And like for me, I just didn't realize that there were other options, but these options have actually been around for a really long time. A lot of these programs they kind of vary in what they allow as far as like restrictions and whatnot. We're going to talk a little bit about that because I know that that's a very hot topic that especially homeschoolers they want to understand that very thoroughly, as you should. Most of these programs allot certain amount of money, and that will widely vary depending on where you live and what type of program. And there are just more and more options becoming available. And this funding can often be spent on, of course, things like curriculum and books, but also like online, other in-person classes. We have everything from like academics, like language arts and math and science and social studies, of course, but we also have things like the fine arts and dance and music and art. Those all can also be used, and we're going to talk a little bit more how we've used these funds. I kind of sometimes find this a little ironic just with our culture, like a cultural observance here, where a lot of families will have their kids gone all day, and all of these subjects are being taught at school, especially like physical education, like sports and the fine arts, like dance and art classes. And then we just come home and enroll our kids in more of those types of classes. So it's just like interesting that it's like we just kind of fill our child's whole days with these things. And why do we do that? Why is it like it's not sufficient at school? And then we just like kind of stack up their schedule. So I just find it's interesting, what is going on? Are we really happy with where these funds are being directed? Are we seeing the kind of outcomes we want? So yeah, anyway, Casey, why don't you tell us a little bit about the ES Fund, Education Savings Account, help people kind of understand, wrap their mind around what this term is.
Yeah. So ESA, as you said, Education Savings Account is probably the most well-known school choice type of program that exists. It's not to be confused with an HSA, Health Savings Account. That's that's something that you use your money with. That's got tax benefits to purchase health-related products, but and services. But the ESA is essentially funded with taxpayer money, and the money is set aside by the state for your child's education. And there's about 18 states right now, so about a third of the country has some form of an ESA. And some of those states have multiple ESAs and multiple programs. In fact, Arizona, a lot of you probably know, they're one that has led the way for this. And they've been operating since I think about 2011. It actually started as a special needs program, but it's now expanded and it's universal, which means it's available to all of the students in Arizona. These programs are always evolving, and a lot of them are becoming more universal. 2020, there was only a handful of states that had ESAs, and by 2025, 2026, there's 18, as I mentioned. So they're growing. And it's also not to be confused with other school choice programs, which I'm sure you're going to get into in a minute, but like vouchers and things like that, those are different. And yeah, every state operates it differently. So we'll talk more about the Utah program in a minute, but funds nationally for these types of programs range from $4,000 to $10,000-ish per student. It can be income based, it can be based on a lottery. And because these programs are new and growing, the more support that they rally and the more information that's out there, hopefully the more traction we can gain for more funding. Regulation is going to vary by state. So
Yeah, we have a lot of questions. We in my stories on Instagram, I put it ahead of time, and so did Casey. We have a bunch of questions we're going to go over about some of the specifics. But one thing I think is really important to know that it's just like, nationwide, it just varies so much on the state. We can talk even about very, very similar programs, and they can have just little tweaks that are different. And so it's very broad. You have to really learn in and tune into what's going on to your state. Some of these other programs, I'm just going to kind of lump together for simplicity, but they have a broad range of terms and how they work and how they're structured. But just for the lingo, I'm just going to kind of lump all of this together just for a really brief overview. So there are options for homeschool funding within charter schools. So families can join charter schools. There's quite a few here. I know in Utah where you're part of the school, and then the school writes you a check or has you reimburse funds to partner with them so that then you can go home and teach your kids maybe like a hybrid model where you are doing some of the education at home and the child is going to school for a couple of hours a day or multiple times a week. So you kind of split between the charter school and your home education. So you can join into those type of programs. Other times, sometimes these charter schools can be really, really flexible. I've also seen them where they're pretty rigid, where it's like you can only use like certain types of curriculums. Like they might tell you, okay, here's 3 language arts curriculums that you can choose from. You're kind of working under our umbrella. And sometimes that can be very helpful for homeschool families, right? It can come in and kind of give you some guideline and maybe that you want to teach certain things, and then the school can kind of come in and support you. It's kind of they're working very closely with the families, right? It's not just school directed. And then you have, and I feel like these programs, especially really growing in Utah, we see, I've seen a lot of families really interested in this kind of option. And you may also hear kind of, again, lumped into this as micro schools where families are coming in and it's kind of a smaller school setting. And again, I've seen them range from your child is in a small micro school multiple days a week to just a couple hours a day. And the idea is that they can, just civil, we can just design these programs however we want. It's up to parents. And oftentimes it's led by a parent that comes in and creates this type of school or a program. So anyway, yeah. Then you have like some things like scholarships or grants or vouchers, and these are often delivered from the private school. So you have a private school that comes in, you apply for a scholarship, and then you can join that. So I mean that's certainly an option. But then you have other programs that just partner with local public schools, and that's the program that we've been involved with Open Ed. And I think Casey has spent some time with Open Ed as well. Another popular one here in Utah is Harmony. We're going to talk a little bit more about these, but these type of programs, basically what they do is they are an independent program that partners with a public school and also with the family. They're kind of like the bridge between the two. But the public school gets a set of funding. I think this is really, really important to understand because I see a lot of miscommunication a lot of times like this. But the public school, since they are partnered with these companies, public schools still get amount of funding. So like if your child is, like say the average is 10,000, and I don't know all the numbers exactly, so don't hold me to this, but maybe the public school's getting a couple of thousand. The program that is partnered with them is getting a couple of thousand, and the parent is getting a couple of thousand. So it's really important to know. I hear a lot of times they're like, oh, these programs are only giving the parents maybe $1,000 and they're keeping all of this money. And that is not correct because they're also, I mean, not only are they like staffing and running their own programs, they're also a portion of those funds are also going to public schools. So technically, in these type of programs, sometimes students are still considered public school students, but they can be full-time homeschooled. They don't even ever see a public school or anything like that. It's just kind of a way to redirect those funds so that the parents are getting them. They are usually some kind of regulation is surrounded around these, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this with regulations, but again, there's state laws that are in place oftentimes when you have these type of programs. And so these regulations are going to really change and shift based on what those state laws are. And the two most common are going to be the state testing and what type of reporting requirements there are. So um, yeah, before we kind of go down a little bit more onto some of those things, Casey, what are some of your thoughts? Again, kind of elaborate a little bit on the direction. Are these changes kind of inevitable from blossoming? We're seeing all these choices come out. What can parents do to keep more educated on how things are shifting and evolving?
Yeah. Well, I think the parent demand and the trajectory both show that these programs aren't going away, but they're growing, they're expanding. The structure, however, is still being defined. And there's a nationwide tug of war happening. The balance is going to be between making sure that there's proper accountability measures, but that it doesn't turn into total control where the parents lose the driver's seat for their children's education. So this is where we're seeing a lot of tension in these programs because like I said, the structure is still being defined. And I think legislators, they're not wrong for wanting basic accountability measures when it's taxpayer money is involved. Yeah. And families aren't wrong for wanting freedom and ownership of their child's education. And so when you can work together and blend the best of both of those, it's going to be some give and take. No one's going to get everything that they want. But if you can find a nice compromise, then it can be a good thing for both sides.
Absolutely. Yeah. So good. One of the questions that I got on Instagram, which I just think is really, really good because it shows how much people care and that they want to be involved and be learning more, which is so good. That's totally what we want. There's kind of like a civic duty for us to do that, right? But the question was in Utah, this is regarding Utah, but I think applies nationwide. Do funding programs seem safe, right? Like, does it worry you that they're going to come in and put on restrictions that can really, that can lead to more regulations? And I mean, absolutely. Yes, that is something that I worry about. But I also think it's good to be realistic. I know that anytime that there's going to be government funding involved, there is going to have to be accountability, right? And there has to come some structure and some regulation. But I just go into that like I go in with my eyes wide open, right? Like I don't expect it not to be. But what I really want to understand is, what do these regulations look like, right? Like, what can we do to see them and also see them in practice? And are they really about accountability and appropriate use of funds? Or are they really starting to affect the day-to-day freedoms that I have? Because that's a big difference for me, right? Is if it's something day-to-day that's affecting what I'm doing in my home, in my school, in my classes, or with my kids, right? Because that's a high priority for me. Is I want to be really involved in my kids' education. And so is it infringing on those freedoms? And do these some of the other questions I ask is, do these programs, are they affecting my ability to choose curriculum? You know, maybe I have a child that is really struggling with something, and I wouldn't use a very specific type of curriculum with them. And so is it allowing me the freedom to use that, right? That's very that's important to our family, to their learning style, right? Like we know that all children learn very differently. And so how wonderful it is that we have this freedom, especially as homeschoolers, that we can cater to those learning styles. And really, ultimately, the idea here behind school choice is that are these programs, are they supporting parents, right? Like that's what I'm looking for. I want to see that you have my best interest in mind, not other things that can get just really off track for me, things that shift kind of this decision making away from parents over time. What are the red flags? So there's just this like really delicate balance, right, Casey? And that's probably, you probably feel similarly, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very valid and fair question that they raised. And I honestly wish that more homeschool families were involved, even if they don't want to participate in these programs, just in understanding and advocating, because you never know when you have a child that might need to tap into some of these resources. And so you're helping form these programs that you might want down the road. And same thing with these parents that go to these programs. I also wish that they would advocate for homeschool freedom. They're not just detaching themselves from the homeschool world, even though there is some separation there. We need to be wise in our advocacy for both of these programs and for homeschool freedoms. But funding always comes with some level of oversight, but it doesn't always automatically mean that you will be removed from the driver's seat of your children's education. And you need to be watching the road ahead. You need to be watching the road signs ahead, because over time, programs evolve, and you need to be paying attention to the proposed bills that are relevant each legislative session. And some of the programs we've seen tighten over the years, others we've actually seen get more flexible. So we just need to be paying attention and advocating for things as we see them come up. I also think we need to be cautious about lumping independent homeschoolers in the same class as these school choice programs, because the ultimate goal is having choices and having options. And if something isn't working, we can pivot. If we allow homeschool freedoms to diminish, then we don't have a backup plan if the strings get pulled too tightly on these school choice programs that we're involved with. So I'm of the opinion that I can advocate for both and that both can exist. And if one gets too restrictive, then I can pivot to the other that better suits our needs. But I love how, like in Utah, for example, the Utah Fits All program classifies students either as like home-based or private school students. and like open ed does them as distance ed students. And those definitions help keep independent homeschoolers in their own unique student class, unaffiliated with these other programs, which helps protect and advocate for each of these groups of children individually. So
Yeah, that's really good. I want to reemphasize those so that for those that haven't followed in Utah, if you're watching this from out of state, is when the Utah Fits All bill passed, they created basically independent homeschoolers as a separate student. So you still, all you have to do is fill out an affidavit, and then you're an independent homeschooler. You are not tied to any type of restrictions or regulations that are put on in these programs if you use them. And I thought that that was a huge relief for me. There have been over the time of history, and I think sometimes people forget this. I mean, I didn't understand this really, that there was a lot of people right before us that have worked really hard to have to support homeschool freedoms in the laws, right? Like it was it was basically essentially illegal to homeschool or to have parents be the ones that would direct their child's education up until like the 1970s, but especially by 1980s, even as late as the early 1990s. And so it's just so good that we are being respectful and watching and making sure that we don't end up back down in that road where parents don't have a say in their kids' education. We want to continue to protect that, and separating that in Utah, I think was a really great thing that I'm so glad that we saw. I think it can also be confusing. Again, I don't know advocacy programs outside of the state of Utah, but some of the ones that I would recommend plugging into for Utah would be the Libertas Institute. I like following them. I think they do a really good job. You Hope is another really great one, and Utah Parents United. So those are just a couple names that you can jump off of if you're like interested, especially, you know, we talk a little bit here about kind of civic duty. I do feel like that there are definitely people who feel really called to being involved. And if you're feeling that, reach out to these programs, get involved, understand these bills, and really know and understand what is shifting and changing. And it shifts and changes a lot. You kind of have to follow up on it, but it's really important for all of us to continue to be aware of these programs and see how they function so that we can be involved and make changes and get involved if we need to. So, okay, I wanted to shift gears a little bit here. Casey, do you have anything to add to that before I shift gears a little bit to some of the programs here in Utah?
nope.
Okay, great. So there's a couple of programs we're going to be talking about here in Utah. So the Utah Fits All is a really big one. Definitely a lot of questions around that, as well as Open Ed. I think Open Ed are the two most popular programs in Utah. So that's why we're going to spend our time on them. I think that this is still really beneficial if you're out of state because it helps you see what is happening here, excuse me, in Utah. But also Open Ed, for example, is expanding all over the United States now. They are in plenty of states. They just opened new opportunities in like Texas and Colorado. And so it's really interesting that if you learn about these programs, because they could come to your states if they're not there already. Now, again, remember, Open Ed here in Utah is going to look a little different than what it could in Texas because you're going to have different laws and state laws that you have to fall under, but we're going to share some of our experiences. I want to really put in also a plug-in for Harmony here because that's also another really popular one that is statewide. I'm not as familiar with with Harmony, but I do know a lot of families like it and use it. We started with Open Ed because that's where my neighbor was, and it's always so easy. Like if you know somebody that can kind of mentor through these programs, it can be so helpful. So actually I was talking to somebody and they asked, well, aren't you having somebody come on from Harmony? It's been such like a great experience from them. And I was like, I think it would actually be really hard. I was like, we could take a panel from so many schools in Utah and say, tell us all about this, but I think we would need to do that live. So we're just kind of talking about this, but I said, why don't you give me a little testimony of Harmony? And I would love to share it. And this is what she said. I've done Harmony for 2 years, and it's been very easy and very flexible. They have a couple of options in terms of learning styles, online courses or portfolios that kind of cater a little bit more towards homeschoolers, and other flexible learning choices. We do what's called a portfolio option, and we get $1,800 per student for each school year for curriculum and tons of learning resources. The two main requirements are that we have We have to answer a weekly attendance question. And then each quarter, we submit 5 to 8 assignments or some kind of proof of her work in each course subject every quarter. And it's just to show the proof of learning. The assignments that come from the curriculum just have to be used, it has to be something that they used during that quarter. Harmony offers various ways to order curriculum or get reimbursed, and it's been very easy to do and work with them. Let me pause right here and I'll just help people understand this too. If you're like, again, if you're hearing this for the first time, it could be like, I can see if you could get confused, where maybe for her portfolio, she just snaps a picture of 1 page of a math assignment that they did during that whole quarter, right? And then for reading, she snaps a picture of a book that they read, okay? We're also assigned a mentor to help us throughout the year if we have resource curriculum questions or need help with Harmony service. They are also great to work with, and they're very, very responsive. Harmony also offers a co-op type day called Options Day, and I'll just plug in here and say this is different than a little bit than what Open Ed offers. Ed has had some similar choices, but they have these co-ops that they meet once a week in certain counties. They offer 3 subjects to choose from and then a discovery subject for a period of 4 hours. So this might be a really good option for a family who kind of wants a little bit of both, right? There's some structure going on, but some parent involvement at home. My kids have participated in this program, this co-op this year, and they've really enjoyed it. The teaching style's hands-on and traditional learning, which has been fun. The teachers at Options Days have been amazing to work with and helping the students really enjoy it. This costs 50% of our allotted funding to be a part of that. So that's something to be aware of, right? They're providing this service for you, but you get to choose whether you want to use all those funds at home for maybe other classes or if this is a class that you want to choose into. Overall, I've really enjoyed working with Harmony Education. In the beginning, it was a little harder to understand how it all works, but with the mentors, it got easier to use. I haven't had any other programs, so I can't say in contrast what it's like compared to the others, but it has worked well for a family for the last 2 years. So really great. I think that was a really good way to understand it. And I want to point out that she said in the beginning, it was a little harder to understand, and just really emphasize that it really helps if you can have a mentor, people to talk to. I know both Casey and I have probably mentored hundreds of people, thousands maybe at this point, behind the scenes with some of these programs, because it does take a minute to learn. It's a little different how your brain works. Casey, anything to add to that?
Nope, just that, Open Ed, they really support parents and parents' decisions pertaining to their children's education. So when I use them, I had a really great experience with working with Open Ed. And I just love that they're supportive of parents, having some allies and aligning ourselves with organizations that really have our children's best interest at heart is a great thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that has been our experience with Open Ed too. I would recommend it over and over again, especially now that we have been using it for 6 years, because I've seen the company evolve and change, and they have done everything they can, especially in the last couple of years, to really support parents. And that is their goal, and into whatever decisions we make. And those are the type of people I really want to be working with, right? And so um, our experience using Open Ed, I think there's just such a broad way that you can utilize it, right? So don't just get stuck on what we've done, but you can utilize these funds and do things however you want. So some of the things that my kids have been able to participate in and have, we have a full home library now. We have so many books, and we are so grateful for that because we have some very avid readers in our house, and it is so nice to have a collection of books that we don't have to wait for a lot of the times. At the library, we'd have to wait sometimes weeks. And by then we're already moving on to the next book. And so I love the home library that we've been able to create. That's something that's been wonderful for our kids. They've had so many reading opportunities. We've had a lot of nature-based experience, some farm-based experience. We've had classes in the natural sciences, which I would never be able to offer here in our home, but I've been able to enroll my kids in classes outside of our home where they've gone in and had experience with just a wide range of different experiences in like agricultural and farming, everything from like the gardening and biology and botany to animal science. And that was a high interest of my girls, if you know us. We've had a STEM. I have a son that just absolutely loves STEM and anything building and engineering. So we've been able to do a handful of classes or kind of cater our learning home opportunities around those type of things. We've of course had private art and music lessons that we've taken advantage of, and of course physical education, lots of sports. We're currently in swimming lessons right now to, of course, help support that a little bit before the summer. We've done reading, tutoring, entrepreneurship courses and lessons and opportunities. We've done sewing classes. We've had to hire a couple of unique just opportunities to teach about. We've hired unique teachers that are passionate about the field that they're in to come in and teach our kids. And that's been really cool. Museum membership, rec center passes. The reporting is really minimal with Open Ed. I love it. It's super simple. We just log in once a week and write a 3 to 5 sentence about our child's learning that week. And I write it, or my kids can write it. Sometimes parents encourage their kids to write it. I like to kind of help monitor it, but I just do a reflection of something they did that week. It can be super simple. A lot of times I'll just get like our math book and use the section heading or the title that we've used and review that this is what my child was working and practicing on. Here in the state of Utah, state testing is optional. And so even if you're a public school student, you can opt out of state testing. And so that falls under our regulations as well. With Open Ed, we have the choice of opting in or out. We choose to opt out of them. I did use them kind of early on for a few things. I was just kind of curious how it all worked and just kind of felt like long term, I honestly knew my child a lot better. I felt like I needed that right in the beginning because I didn't know what I was really doing. And then I'm like, oh, this isn't really an accurate representation because I feel like I'm so involved every single day with what's going on with my kids. So we opt out of testing. So that's a choice. That won't be the case for every state, because if your state requires it, then Open Ed in other states will have to require testing. So, okay, that's been my experience with Open Ed. Just love them. Casey, you also used them for a number of years. It had great experience. Anything else you want to add before we move on to UFA?
Nope. No, I
Okay.
think we're good.
Okay,
I mean,
great. Let's go. Let's turn the time over to Casey. Let me give a little background context. I think that'll help people, especially coming into this, because UFA has been a really hot topic here in Utah. So, the bill was passed in 2023. The program has evolved since then quite a bit. We've seen a lot of changes, and where it sits today, right now, students K through 6 are awarded $4,000 per year per child if you are a home-based child. 6,000 for grades 7 to 12, right? So,
yeah, it's based on age. So they do
oh,
it.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
like 5 to 11 is the age range for the $4,000, and then
Okay.
if you're 12 or older as a home-based student, then it's the
The
6,000.
6,000. Okay.
Yeah.
$8,000 for those who choose a private school option. I think it's worth noting that 80% of those that use UFA are home-based students, those that are homeschooling. So huge support in the homeschool community for this program. Priority, this is really important to understand. Priority goes to the low-income families in a lottery system after that. So a lot of questions on what's the likelihood of getting them. We're going to talk about that. Hopefully in Utah, we're going to move to something similar like Arizona. That's the hope, right? We're on the path to go that way. The more support and demand the program has, we'll see budget increases. We should note here, I think it's really important and that parents should know that, especially if you're brand new coming into this, UFA is under a lawsuit right now from the Utah Education Association. They sued the state of Utah and the state in 2024, right? 2024. And they said that it was an unconstitutional, and so it sits with the Supreme Court right now. And so, we are unsure of what could happen with the program. But I also think it's just as important to note that we also expected this, and we have seen this happen in other states, and it's also been an issue that's been able to be resolved in other states. So we're hopeful. It's not keeping people, I think, from at all using the program. They've allowed the program to continue running until that happens. We don't know if that's going to happen or when that's going to happen. Could be this fall, could be next year, could be a while. We just never know with these things, do we? One thing I wanted to say before I turn it over to Casey too is I had a friend who was using the Arizona program, and when I called her to learn about the Utah Fits All program back in probably 2023, I was like, is this okay? Like, is this good for homeschoolers? You do what every homeschooler does in the beginning, is like, is this going to take away my freedoms? Because that's not what I want. I'm not going to support this. And she's like, no, it's been so fantastic. But she's like, you should know the program is very rocky. And she said the first years that it rolls out will be very, very hard. And so I think for me, I went into knowing that there was going to be some bumps. So anyway, Casey, I'm going to turn the time over to you. Let's have realistic expectations and tell us what your experience has been.
Yeah. And before I get into that, I just wanted to add in that, these programs are the vehicle and not the driver. So for me, if that ever flips, then I'm, willing to make a
We're
change.
out.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. But these are tools, and we can use these tools without handing over complete ownership. And so if it ever stops that, then I'll reevaluate.
Yeah,
Um,
very good.
but one of the main reasons that I chose the Utah Fits All, we had been using OpenEd, and then we switched over to this, the higher funding amount. And we were actually waitlisted initially, and I didn't think that we were even going to get on there, and then we did. And so I was also looking into these programs. One of the reasons that drew me to the programs to begin with was I was just tired of paying for my kids' education twice. Once to go to the schools and my taxes, and then I'm still having to fork up everything out of my own pocket. And I had kids with dyslexia, and some of their resources are very expensive. And so I was just looking, I'm like, how can I build the best education for my kids I possibly can? And so that's when I started looking into some of these other resources and tapping into them, because I saw opportunities that I could tap into that wouldn't have been as feasible if I was trying to do it on my own. And so at a foundational level, I believe that money should follow the child, but I just love that we're able to utilize these resources. I also, with Utah Fits All, have had a variety of experiences with my kids. We haven't used it for as long as like Open Ed, but in the couple years that we've used it approximately, we've been able to also build a home library. We've been able to access tutoring. We've been able to tap into, as I mentioned, resources for my dyslexic kids. We've been able to prioritize a fine arts education, which is so important for some of my kids who really thrive with that. So like music and dance and arts, like those are all very beneficial for some of my kids. And also some of them, I mean, each kid is unique, and so their gifts, like being able to build it around what their God-given gifts are, has just been really great.
Like your son, who's amazing at piano. He's so amazing.
And you know what? Because of the Utah Fits All scholarship, he was able to work himself through, his music classes, to a top 18 spot in the National Federation of Music Clubs honors piano recital.
Yeah.
So, hard work, but with the catalyst to get there. And so we are so grateful for this program. Also, we've been able to educate our kids in a way that align with our beliefs. Like this year, we were able to get, and this isn't the case with all programs because not all programs allow faith-based resources, but we were able to get like different versions of the Bible to be able to study, because that's something that we wanted to explore more this year. Manipulatives for my kids that learn best through hands-on. More margin to say yes to resources and opportunities that just enhance and enrich their learning. Extra science for my kids who love science. One of my kids actually this year through Utah Fits All, it was one of their classes that they had taken. They discovered that they're really great at crocheting. And so now they're looking into exploring, how can I start a business with this skill that I've developed? And what does that look like? So they're headed down that road, which is really neat. One of my kids is an athlete, and so being able to balance the academics with their athletic side has been really great. The Utah Fits All does have a cap on like PE, so it's 20% of the scholarship amount. But it's helpful. It may not cover everything, and these programs aren't intended to cover everything, but it's definitely helpful, and we're able to customize it in a way that best fits each of my individual children. We've used both their private school option and their home-based option. The private school experience is totally contingent upon the individual school that you choose. And these private schools have to be vetted by Odyssey. Odyssey is the program manager who interprets the laws and runs the program. So not just any private school will be eligible under the private school funding tier of the $8,000. So for us, our private school experience, I mean, it was a lot of reporting, it was a lot of recording, it was a lot of documentation. And in some ways, it was more about like proving the education than the learning itself. And so that's one of the red flags. I'm like, okay, do we need to maybe step back and do something different, or do we continue and kind of reassess some things? But again, the experience is going to be totally contingent on the individual private school that you choose. The nice thing about going the private school route, though, because the reporting that's required for Utah Fits All is a portfolio at the end of the year. And if you are a private school student, the report card that they issue you is all you have to submit. That's it. So you just turn in the report card and it's done. So yes, it was a little bit more work along, throughout the year, but then come time for that portfolio, I just submit the report card and I'm done. If you go the home-based route, then you do have to submit the portfolio, and it can be simple. It could be work samples or learning summaries. But I take it seriously because I want to uphold the integrity of the program. And so, I think it's important, but it's probably comparable to like Harmony's experience where they're having to submit like work samples, things like that would totally suffice for the portfolio. You can also do state testing if you want. That is an option, but you don't have to. You can opt out of that. So if you opt out of the state testing, then you have to do the portfolio. And if you do the private school, then you can do the report card. And if you do the home base, then you have to do your own portfolio that you compile. Hopefully that made sense. Also, as home-based students, we didn't come across any major like barriers with Utah Fits All to create the education that we felt was best for our children, which is great. Like I said before, it doesn't cover everything, but it does cover a lot. And the stuff that it does cover helps free up some funding for the things that it doesn't cover. And also, I think, what was I going to say? Okay, like instruments, for example, are something that's not covered, unfortunately, but you can get like a rental for an instrument. And so that was something that kind of, like I had a child who really would have benefited from this particular instrument, but it was an option. But because I was able to use funding for other things, that can help free up the funds to be able to get the instrument. So it's kind of
a little give and take. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think overall it hasn't hindered us from being able to educate in the way that we want to educate. We've had the freedom to include faith-based resources and use the curriculum that we want, and really take the driver's seat for my kids' education. So we've been very happy with it.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome experience. Walk us through a little bit what the reimbursement process looks like for people. I think that's a question that comes up a lot, is that can be really overwhelming.
Yeah. So the reimbursement process, you can either purchase things through their marketplace, which is actually really expansive, and we've shopped a lot through their marketplace. I haven't had any trouble like technology or books or things like curriculum even. Their marketplace, honestly, I've had a really great experience with it. I've had a harder time finding like the pencils that we want on there, but those are inexpensive, so it hasn't been a big deal. But you do have the option, if you can't find what you need on marketplace, or if you just want to purchase it somewhere else, maybe it's a better deal somewhere else, you can purchase it out of your own pocket and then submit for reimbursement to be repaid for that expense that was incurred. So the reimbursement is an option. They did make a change for the law for this upcoming year. The reimbursements, once they're approved, they need to be returned to the parent within 10 business days. But how long the approval process is going to take, that'll be up to Odyssey to interpret. So we've seen anything from less than 4 weeks of a reimbursement turnaround. We've seen up to 6 weeks. They really try and strive to keep it under a month, but we've seen exceptions to that on, either the low end or the high end. So, and next year could be different. So the reimbursement process, though, you don't have to have, like, say your piano teacher up the road is teaching your child piano classes. They don't have to be on the marketplace in order to be able to get access to those classes. You can, again, purchase it out of your own pocket and submit for reimbursement for that. So we haven't had any trouble getting access to the things that we've needed for our kids' education.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's really, really helpful. Um, one thing that I was thinking about as you were talking that I think that's also been really good that that these opportunities that these vendors are in this marketplace, it really fuels the economy. It's so good for small business opportunities. I actually just went to the Utah Education Fits All vendor fair last Saturday. It was here in Utah at BYU. And I am like, I don't love being around a lot of people. I know it's probably shocking to a bunch of introverted homeschoolers.
I'm the same.
Yeah. And I'm just like, there are so many options to choose from. So many, like so many. I think there was 135 vendors, just so many options to choose from. And I'm sure that that's just a very small sampling of it. And they are not short. And I just think of what a wonderful opportunity for all these small businesses to that they can come in with things. Literally every person we talked to was so passionate about what they do. And I'm like, those are the type of people I want in my kid's life, right? Like, I don't necessarily have to teach everything, but I can come in and utilize some of these resources. We met the cutest couple who turned their house into like an art studio, and I think they're like a newlywed couple, and I just loved their setup, like just this cute little house. And I'm like, I would take my kids there if we lived a little closer to this cute little house for their art lessons. Like, I just love that it's fueling and helping these other people in our community as well. Just a really positive cycle, I think.
Yeah, we've actually discovered some new resources from, like, the providers that have put their products on their marketplace. That's how we've discovered some things that
Yeah.
have been really great for my kids. So the network is great.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, let me see. Do you feel like you have to integrate, or like, do you feel like you have to manage UFA a lot, like on a day-to-day basis?
No. And the way I think about it is you have these funding amounts. Like, if I had a job that paid me that much money that I was going to put towards my kids' education, is it worth the time that I'm putting in to
That's what
run
I think
it?
too. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm like, no, it really isn't. Especially, like I said, with the expansive marketplace, like, we've been able to get a lot through that, which no out of pocket expense for us. And some of it's even shipped from Amazon. It's like at my doorstep the next day. So no, no.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, let's move to, do you have anything else you want to add, Casey? Where I have a bunch of just rapid fire questions that people asked on my Instagram. I think you might have had some as well that we put a list together that we can just kind of go through and respond to real quick these last couple minutes before we wrap it up. Anything else you want to add?
No, I was just thinking, um, probably one of the favorite things that we've been able to get from this program has been our piano classes. And it just made me so grateful. I'm like, I wish every kid had the opportunity to have these piano classes because it's so good for your brain. It's one of the only instruments that's able to get multiple parts of the brain working together. It can help rewire pathways in your brain. And I'm just really grateful that we were able to, like, choose the piano teacher and be able to access those for my kids because it's helped them in all of their subjects in all areas of their life, those piano classes. So I would say just a little plug in for my favorite thing that we've gotten from our experience with those. That, I mean, piano classes get expensive, and when you have
They
multiple
do.
kids,
Yeah.
like, I'm just so grateful that we've had that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We've had same things. I was trying to think of our favorite thing. I really do think that having just my favorite thing has been able to be involved in my kids' lives, right? Like to be able to be there for all of these moments. I know when we first pulled them out to homeschool, we were formerly in public school. I was terrified, and I just immediately saw progress within just a couple of weeks. And I just was amazed of the beauty of learning and being able to be a part of it. It was seeing my kids reading, and I was just like, oh my gosh, they've improved in just 3 weeks. Like, this works. I can do this. And I think that being a part of those moments has been my favorite part. And so being able to support those, like having lots of books and the literature in our home and good literature that I feel like The Good and the Beautiful really taught me this, that the books that we read to our children really matter, that we want to have uphold high character and honesty and integrity. And sometimes the books that can land in children's laps don't support that. And I've just loved being able to see that growth and that character happen, with my kids, and kind of help protect that and support them in that development. So okay. I've got some questions for you, Casey, and I'll probably answer a couple of these too, the last couple of minutes. Let's see. Which of these programs allow you to do language courses at a local public school? That's a good question. I actually don't know much. We have not looked into foreign language at all. Let's talk a little bit about dual enrollment. I can tell you a little bit about that. Casey, can you answer more on that?
So with Utah Fits All, they will allow you to take a course from the local public school if the district or charter, the LEA, if they are an approved provider. So if you want more information about the
Right.
approved provider, you can go to the Odyssey website and it gives you details about the process and how to do that. But you want to ensure that the school is indeed an approved provider, because you cannot be dual enrolled on the Utah Fits All scholarship or you're going to lose the scholarship. So there's a special way that it's got to be done,
Yes.
but
Yep.
it is possible, and they're going to charge you for that class. So
Yeah, and it's not just language courses. You can do a la carte classes as long as they're approved. Yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
yep.
Okay. Can kids participate in extracurriculars like sports or theater at your local public school? Same idea. It just depends. I mean, this is just pure with homeschooling in general. Go ahead, Casey. I can tell. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, with Utah Fits All, and so I'm basing all of these on my understanding of the intent of the law and Odyssey's experience with Odyssey as a
Interpretation.
program manager
Yeah.
and their interpretation. But my understanding is that yes, they absolutely can. That's what I understand the intent of the law to be for this upcoming year. And the local education agency, the LEA, public school district, or charter, they can't place stricter requirements on scholarship students than on those that are being applied for, like the homeschool students or the private school students for athletics and extracurriculars. And so you should be able to tap into those resources. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Is it worth enrolling with UFA? Some people say that they won't fall into the low income bracket. Is it worth applying? What do you think, Casey?
Absolutely. The more applicants that are there, it shows more demand for the program. And so I think it's so important. Like everybody just, if you're even like 1% interested, go apply. Um, the tiers go for, as far as like priority tiers, it goes, the current students get first priority, and then their siblings are second priority, and then it goes to the new lower income families, and then it goes to everyone else. And if they have more applicants than they have spots to fill, then it goes into like a wait list. But the fourth tier, where it goes, opens it up to everybody, is a lottery based. So it's not like a first come, first serve basis. But I would strongly encourage, yes, please, if you are, even if you're exploring multiple programs, like just go apply for it and show them that there is a demand for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Some clarifications. I know waitlisted, it's new every year. So just because you're on the wait list the first year, it could be different the next year. And also, oh, I was going to say a lot of people ask, if we're with Open Ed now, do we continue to stay with open ed and also apply to UFA? What does that transition look like? We are with open ed right now. We're applying for UFA. I wanted to do it before this call, but I didn't get to it. But I am planning to do it. The deadline to apply for this year is May 1st, I believe.
May 31st? Is it the
Or
31st or 1st? I
so
think,
for new, I think it's different for each of us, Casey. I think for new applicants, it's April 30th or May 1st. You guys better double check. But for you, that's already a part of it, I think it's May 31st. Is that correct? Does that sound
yeah,
right?
the reapplication period from March 1st to May 31st. Yeah. So the
Yeah,
reapplication.
for you. Yeah. So if
Yeah.
for in my case where I've never used the program before, you want your application in, I would say by April 30th. Please don't wait till the last
Yeah.
couple days. These systems can still sometimes be buggy because they're still new. So just get in there, get your time a couple weeks in advance so that you're ready to go. So we'll apply for it. We'll also stay with open ed until we know if we get it. We'll go into the lottery. So we'll decide at that time, like if there's an option. We could be awarded it in October. We could get it next spring because people are dropping out of the program. So we're just going to stay with it. And it's probably, I mean, if you're with Open Ed now, you're going to know that if you leave Open Ed mid-program, you need to pay back what you have already used. And so it might be that you wait to get reimbursement on your funds or wait to spend funds and, until things, iron out. If you're hopeful you'll get it. But we'll see what it looks like this fall, like if you see that you're really far on the wait list, maybe it's easy for you to just say, okay, we'll just stick with open ed this year and see what happens next year. Is that what you would also advise, Casey?
You definitely. And they're allocating more funding to it this year.
Yeah.
So, and you're going to have graduating seniors and people that are moving and doing different things. And so there's going to be opportunities. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's a good shot. I know most people that applied last year, at least within my circles, most people got it. So and that was one really nice thing about seeing that funding being able to be distributed to more families. It has helped a lot more families and kids have access to these funds. Okay, questions on, let's see. Are there programs after 8th grade through Open Ed? This is probably if you're outside of Utah, because here through Utah, Open Ed goes through grade 12. So if you only see 8th grade through Open Ed, that's specific to your state. When they expand, it's going to be in different offerings in different states. Some may be even K through 6, but I'm not sure exactly which one is in the state. You'll have to study your state's specifics. Can you use all of your own curriculum choices through Open Ed? Do you have to take any online classes through them? That's a really good question. You can use their online questions, at least, or online classes again here in Utah. We haven't used them in many years, but they do offer them. But it's not a requirement. So I don't think that will be something that you have to do. For the most part, you can choose all your own curriculum if you want to, or you can plug into their resources if you want to. It's there to serve the parent. You get to choose. Do you have to take state testing in person or can it be remotely through Open Ed? That's going to be dependent on your Open Ed place. I know sister programs to Open Ed and different states. I've heard it all. I've heard different places, different things. What options are there? It's going to be very specific. Casey, can you tell us anything about UFA and IEPs or 504s and how they can receive accommodations?
Yeah. So once you are part of like Utah Fits All, you no longer have the public school obligated to provide you with any of those resources. So it basically shifts from like the school requirement to a parent decision-making process. Because you can use the funding to purchase tutoring and to purchase things that are helpful for your child, but it doesn't have to be, it's not anything that you're going to need necessarily accommodations through the public school for, like speech therapy, occupational therapy. All of those things are approved expenses based on Odyssey's interpretation of the law, the way it sits right now. And so you will not have any sort of like an IEP or anything. You also don't have to work on grade level. So you can go at your child's own pace. If you have a gifted kid who needs to go, years ahead of himself, like go for it. If you have a child who needs to slow it down a little bit, absolutely. So it just becomes the parent making those decisions and deciding what their child needs. As far as the state testing goes, we already kind of touched on that you can opt out of that. So if you're opting out of the state testing, then you wouldn't need accommodations for the state testing either. So it would just be the portfolio that you'd compile. So there isn't anything. Also, with the private school, that'd be something that you'd have to work out with the individual private school, because all private schools have their own parameters for things like that. And a lot of them don't really accept the IEPs or the 504s necessarily, but they're oftentimes willing to work with the parents still. But that's definitely a public school thing. And once you leave the public school system, then you're not going to be utilizing the IEP or 504.
Yeah, and I will say after just coming out of this vendor fair the other day, there are so many options specifically for those things, especially. There are so many people anxious to help those students that maybe have struggled with reading or dyslexia or ADHD or so many different avenues to explore. So lots of options out there. Okay. I think that we'll wrap it up here. Casey, thank you so much for giving your time and sharing this knowledge with all of us. And I appreciate it so much. It's been fun to hop on here. Anything else that you'd like to add?
No, just thank you for having me, and hopefully it was helpful. And I'm always available if people have more questions, want to come find me later. I'm happy to chat. So,
Yep. You can find her at Red Brick Schoolhouse. Yep, here on Instagram. So, okay, we'll see you guys later.
yeah, thanks.